So yeah, thanks for joining us already, Andrew. That's amazing that you're even like right on time on the dot too. That's awesome.
Wow, what are you suggesting, Scott? Yeah,
The rumors are false. Andrew is prompt.
So yeah, everybody. So thanks for everyone for coming here today. And the main topic of what we're talking about today is Comingle. And I've put in the link to the Indiegogo campaign in the comments section. So you can look at that and find a link to the Indiegogo, learn more about that. And so we're going to be mainly talking about that, but we just want to talk in general too about UBI in general, and about the Forward Party in general, and a little bit about Andrew's new book that's coming out soon too, called The Last Election. And I'm looking forward to this discussion.
geez, Scott, I didn't know we were talking about that. Some of that.
Yeah, I figured
I
you're
think this is
here.
like oh no, I mean, I appreciate it. So, yeah, uh, I'm excited to be able to support uh, Comingle and the UBI community. Uh, UBI's come a long way since the presidential, for sure. There are now, in my opinion, there was essentially a nationwide trial
Yeah.
during COVID, either in the form of the enhanced child tax credit or the relief payments, or both. And the data is very, very positive, certainly on the enhanced child tax credit, for which there's more robust studies. And then there are dozens of municipalities around the country and nonprofits who are working with it in various ways. One of the major things that some of you may know about, some of you may not, but there is a very, very large scale, rigorous UBI multi-year uh, implementation that right now is in its final year, and they've actually been keeping it under wraps because they want to
Hmm.
air the data out without any. I mean, they really were incredibly buttoned up. They got academics and PhDs and researchers. So this is going to be the most unimpeachable data set. They even had control where there were some families that didn't get money.
Hmm.
So tens and tens of millions of dollars were spent on this, maybe hundreds even, certainly tens of millions of dollars. It's the largest explicit UBI trial that has happened in the U.S. in generations, and the results should be out
Next year.
spring. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is the timeline. So I think that is going to be an enormous catalyst. I will speak briefly about my take on this stuff, which is UBI went from 27% approval to 65% approval between 2018 and 2020, which I dare say a lot of people on this space had something to do with that. And in the old days, I might have thought that if 65% of us want something, we might get it. But now I've realized that what we want has very little relationship with what we get.
Yeah, like look at gerrymandering with like, on both sides of the aisle, 9 out of 10 people do not want gerrymandering, but there it is.
Yeah, something like 85% of people want money out of politics, and there it is. Uh, I realized that popular will is getting diffused and distorted, and muted in most cases by our current setup, our political party setup. And so I've undertaken a super fun task of trying to change the way the party systems are set up and work. And board parties growing all the time. We have 36 elected officials now. I'm in Seattle right now, going to do some local press and then a fundraiser. So so I'm in my mind, we're still on the poverty alleviation mission, and I'm pleased by some of the things that have happened since 2020, but in some ways very discouraged because, and Scott now lives in DC, but the regulatory environment, not regulatory, legislative environment has gotten rougher around some of this stuff. There's a lot of confusion about inflation and its relationship to cash relief.
Yeah.
So there are things that have there've been wins and losses, shall we say, over this last period. But to me, the path is, and I will say too that one of the things I said on the presidential, which I'm now more convinced of, is that it's going to involve a repurposing of some of the way that we're spending money. And so I used to talk a lot about, we're spending money on healthcare, we're spending money on incarceration. This would be investment in education, this would be investment in health, and all that's true.
Mhm.
Investment in the economy, all of that's true as well. But one of the things that I've been more and more fixated on lately, and if anyone who's kept up with my podcast, one of the more compelling conversations I had was last week with a woman named Jennifer Polka, that there's just a lot of waste in government.
Mhm.
And one of the things that the numbers that's caught my attention is that in certain urban school districts, we're spending up to literally $30,000 per student per year on schools that aren't even performing. And so one of the thoughts is like, maybe you could give the family like some of that money. Like maybe you spend 18 and you give them 12, and like I have a feeling that the kid might learn more.
Yeah.
There are different paths I'm uh, taking, trying to move us in the same direction. I do think that it's going to involve a combination of ranked choice voting and a reorientation of the party system for more of us to get more of the things we want, as opposed to right now. It's like you have this really concretized system that doesn't want to give, like
Yeah.
it doesn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, you have like a 94% incumbent reelection rate, even though 80% of us are displeased with what's going on at any moment in time. So I'm convinced that the system is what needs to go to change in order for us to have this stuff at scale. But there are going to be some things to be excited about, hopefully when the mega study comes out next year.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say too that people who didn't follow your campaign closely, like those who weren't in the Yang Gang, and were there's always plenty of misinformation and disinformation in primaries, especially in our primary system, because of what we refer to as the primary problem, thanks to them being so partisan. But as part of your campaign, I mean, you were totally running on a systems wide view at the time where, it wasn't people kind of tried to peg you and pin you into this, pure UBI and only UBI candidate. And yet you were also running on ranked choice voting and democracy dollars and the American scorecard as being, these systems important changes to really make everything work. And I know that people, really felt passionately about not only basic income, but those other ones too. And it just makes sense. I mean, we absolutely have to have a system that can actually respond to people and listen to our concerns and not uplift like the extremists, and make sure that we get some sane, responsive policy making. So yeah, when people look at what the Forward Party and stuff and think that it's somehow not basic income or something, it's like it's really important to lay the groundwork so that we can actually have a system that can achieve that. And we've always felt that way. So I think that's important for people to understand.
Well, thanks, Scott. I mean, you understood it immediately, which I always appreciate. It's yeah, and um, you also were one of the early readers of the last election, which comes out next Tuesday,
Yep,
which does mention universal basic
it
income,
does.
not heavily. there's an independent presidential candidate who runs on ranked choice voting and universal basic income.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. And the book's a bit dark. It's a bit of a cautionary tale. So someone who's looking for a UBI book, this is not it. It's more like a dark look at what could happen in the not so distant future in our current political system if you have a closed first past the post voting system and a major independent candidate runs. You and I haven't really talked about it, Scott. What did you think of the book? And everyone here, you can ignore the book if you want, because like novels might not be your jam, which I totally understand.
I don't want to spoil too much. I'll just say that I really enjoyed how it's written as an election that takes place essentially next year, as a warning as to how things really could work out in the future. But also in the same way, it exists as like kind of a, let's say like a take on your own campaign from 2020, and it having like this kind of fiction non-fictional take where like some of it definitely is like real and really happened to you, and then some of it didn't, and then it's hard for people to understand which is which, and I think that's part of the fun. So it's almost like as a member of the Yang Gang, reading the book, I think they'll really love how it's kind of like a real insider look at that campaign, from a kind of fictional perspective where you just don't know which is which, and at the same time as being this future campaign, which I think is also really important. And I think it's funny too how some people will, like, even when you first started the Forward Party, it was always, oh, Yang's going to run for president again as the Forward Party, and that's going to throw the election to Trump, is going to be a spoiler. And at the same time, it's like, well, the entire purpose of the Forward Party is to, make sure that ranked choice voting is in place and the spoiler effect is killed, so that third-party candidates can run without spoiling elections. But on the other side of it, too, it's funny how you now have a fictional book out where really the lesson to be learned is do not run a third-party candidacy without ranked choice voting, in place. That.
Well, certainly that's one of the potential takeaways.
yeah, that's one of
them. Not to give anything away, but
yeah.
There's like I mean, when I worked with Stephen Marsh on the book, who's a more experienced novelist, he actually just said to me, it's like, hey, what do you think happens if you do this? What happens if you think you do that? And I just answered honestly. I was like, well, like the most likely things that would happen would be this or that or that. And so that's how the story unfolds. I tried to make it as it's dark. It's even darker than reality, but I tried to make it as true to life as possible.
Yeah, I would describe it as, it's a, I don't know, dystopian, realistically, not like a Hunger Games dystopian, but a hey, look, like this is more like a Black Mirror kind of dystopian kind of thing, of where like can be very real.
That's a good comp. I think Black Mirror is kind of what we were going for. Which leads us to Comingle, which is a very, very positive
yes.
uplifting.
Yeah. So. And I should remind everyone too, it sounds like we're 18 minutes into this. So just a quick refresher that this space with Andrew Yang and the co-creators of Comingle is about covering Comingle and the Indiegogo campaign that just launched 2 days ago. We're on day 3, and let's see, current numbers are over $27,000 raised, and 271 backers so far, and 36% of the way to the goal of $75,000. And the app is meant to be a UBI implementation at a private level via essentially a voluntary flat tax of 7% that would provide a small basic income uh, based on whatever the average is of the entire group. So I think that this is an important mechanism to get in place for multiple reasons. And I explain this in my blog post that you can find in the reply to the space. But I think one of the main reasons is it really helps people. I think the potential is there to really help people understand much better how UBI works. And this is people tend to think of it as, oh, everybody gets money, so therefore you're inflating the money supply. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can have a deficit neutral implementation where it's paired with as much taxes as it is being sent out, and therefore it's not expansionary. But people kind of get confused by that. And people will respond and go, oh, Bill Gates, what? He gets it too? And it's like, well, yeah, he gets it too, but he pays in a whole lot more than he gets out. He's a net contributor to everyone else. His disposable income goes down. And so I think people within the Comingle community will clearly understand that mechanism, whereas those outside of it, continue being confused by it. So those are two important things, I think, about it.
Scott, I'd actually say, to take a step back for someone who just dropped in, what the heck is Comingle? What are we talking about?
I can help with that one. This is Conrad. I'm one of the co-founders of Comingle. It goes back to a lot of what you were saying, Andrew, about how we don't really decide what gets done in our country right now. It's sort of run by whatever the powers are that be. We can have 80% support or something, and we still don't get it right. So something in our system is broken. But as I've been doing this UBI work alongside you guys for this whole 7 years, and watching this and thinking this has to get done at a federal level. That's the North Star of what we're trying for, and becoming increasingly sort of discouraged at the idea that there's a path or an easy path there. At the same time as realizing, hey, look at these tech platforms that are basically as powerful as countries. Like, people don't know what to do with them. So what if one of them was sort of built with the connective power of the internet to function as its own little government and just do a UBI? That's a way to do an end run around the entire political will issue, right? We don't have to convince 80, 90, or whatever percent of the country needs to be demanding it to get a UBI in place. As step one, we can build our own UBI with a self-selected little nation of people that want to try it out. And there's plenty of people to make the first permanent and scalable UBI community that's actually moving money among themselves as a real basic income, and we can grow it fast.
Well, that was a good explanation of Comingle, Conrad. So how does it work? Let's say I'm here and I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So essentially, it's like, think of it like a tithe or a tax, that would be funding a basic income. We all pledge 7% of our income every week, and that's tracked by banking connections through third-party vendors like Plaid. Most of us have our bank accounts connected through these vendors for our different apps that we use and things like that. We're using those same connections to track income in an automated and efficient way, so that everyone who's connected automatically has 7% of their income pledged every single week. It's a weekly sort of a basic income pool. That all that money goes into a pot, or it's calculated in a pot, how much is the total amount, and then at the end of each week it gets divvied up in exactly equal share and goes out to every single member. So some people with higher incomes than the average income of the group will end up putting more money in than they get out on those weeks that they're making more, and people who are having a bad week and they're not getting much income will get more out than they put in. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating an entire community that's saying to each other, we won't let anyone in this community ever go a week where they have less than 7% of the average income of this group coming in. It's like a cushion that we just make for ourselves by throwing all our money into the pot.
So one question that popped into mind for me immediately is that like you can distinguish between income and then other money coming into your account, right? Like, because if you I don't know how it works. Like, like occasionally people send, maybe that's still income. I don't know, but 7% is very manageable. Like, if you make it 1,000 in a week, it's only $70.
Yeah. That's the reason we picked 7 to start with. Is it's big enough that the payout will be significant. $50 a week as like sort of a floor, as a minimum to be going out to an individual is $200 a month, which is very significant in a lot of cases. So it's big enough to make a real impact, and it's small enough to not really scare people away, because 6.999 whatever percent is the most anyone could possibly be contributing, and you'd have to be quite wealthy to be giving that much money. And so the way that you determine income is part of what we're raising money to continue developing, is the intelligence of the categorization of people's income, right? So a lot of things, when you get the information through Plaid, we don't get your banking data, but we get the transactions list with a set of tags, right? And anything that is going out of your bank account, clearly not income. Anything that's a deposit, some of it is tagged as payroll, and that's obviously income. Part of the smartening up the machine is to determine what's pre-tax and what's post-tax. But like if your dad is gonna Venmo you back for paying for lunch or something like that, that's clearly not income, and so we don't want to take 7% of that.
That's the example I was thinking of.
Yeah. I mean, we all have money coming into our account all the time that doesn't necessarily represent income, right? And we absolutely don't want to take 7% of that. So the default is going to be whatever income we know is income, we claim as income, and we make the thing smarter as we go, through machine learning and building up our algorithms experience. And then for anything we're not sure about, especially extra large amounts of income, there'll be a step before the 7% is claimed, where it's put to the user, is this income? Sort of on an honor system as we smarten it up and make it as simple and easy as possible in the long term. The idea being here that this should be something that the revenue and the model and the way this system works is meant to be built in and as easy as possible, so that someone, if they want to engage with the community and the platform to their heart's content, great. But there is no sort of engagement metric that we care about. Someone should also be able to just set it and forget it, and not look at it for a year, and know that they're either receiving a little help on a weekly basis, or they're giving a little help very efficiently on a weekly basis, and not have to spend too much attention on that.
I think this might be a good opportunity, actually, for Josh to chime in and mention how we already have, an alpha or play money beta going on right now, and what's been learned from that. So I think a lot of people don't know too. So that this is partially developed to the point where it is actually to the point of being a play money beta. So I think that'd be good for Josh to talk about.
Yeah. Hey, that is true. We've been playing around with this for a couple of years now, and that is, Andrew, you kind of nailed really like the main question, the main technical issue that we're trying to focus in on is like, how do you know what should be something that counts towards a community contribution, and what is just a gift from your grandma, and so we've got the data in there that we're playing with to try to refine that. But we're looking at it as what if this was the way that we paid taxes? Is this actually paying taxes is like one of the most annoying things that you have to do in life, and like just figuring out how to pay what you think you owe to the government that is doing who knows what with that money is very like onerous and annoying, and you have to you spend a lot of time with an accountant determining like what should be taxable, what isn't taxable. So our job is already like a 1,000 times easier than that because we're just kind of using the banking data to make some pretty smart guesses up front and put way less of the burden on the user to have to determine that. So, and in this way, you actually know where your money is going to. It's actually going just to other people. And so that's...
Well, I love the dollar for dollar aspect of it. So right now, this Indiegogo campaign, two questions. What is this campaign funding? Go ahead, take that one.
Campaign is funding just development. So just the figuring out all of those technical issues. One of the next biggest steps is going to be actually dealing with real bank transfers, ACH transactions, figuring out the quickest, most efficient way to get the money to and from people. So yeah, that's a big part of it. Figuring out a lot of security issues, trying to hone in on the potential ways that it could be exploited by somebody, if, just so that people can feel secure that, there aren't a lot of people out there trying to cheat this system. Yeah, it's all development.
Well, I'm very happy to contribute to the development. I'm going to go to the Indiegogo campaign and make a $5,000 contribution right now.
Thanks, Andrew.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
No problem. It'll be fun watching this thing move up in real time.
I'm clicking refresh obsessively.
Give me a sec, man. I'm talking to you guys. And then my third question is, if someone's intrigued again, they could I have a couple of ideas I want to throw out there. Number one is one of the principles of UBI, and Scott has lived this in a way, is like trying to find our shared resources to fund it. I think that this pooling of income, so that it buffers people, is very sensible. And for most humans, what it would amount to is you give 70, you get back 50, and then you're like, fine, and it was dollar for dollar. And then in some cases, something goes bad for you, and then you're like, oh, I'm really glad I'm getting this, 50 or 60 or whatever the number is. Plus, it's dollar for dollar, and it's pure. But if one does want to discontinue, one could at any time.
Yeah, that's super important to us, is that it's very low risk for everybody. So the user experience when you come to it is, the first thing you can do is just kind of see how the community is doing and how the reports are, and maybe enter in, self-report your income and get some information back on how you would have done in previous weeks, where your money would have gone, how much you would have come out ahead. And then comes preview mode, where you can sign up, but not actually be transacting money, just share your account data so that you would know exactly how you do week to week, and that's indefinite. And then when you go active, you can shut it down anytime you want. The only caveat is, if you want to come back, you can't just skip the months where you have high income and come back when you have low income. We have a look back window on the time that you're gone, and you have to catch back up on what you would have
owed. And so the idea I have is, and this could be incredibly fun, is that one of the goals, some of the things I was saying on the trails, like, hey, we all have data, it costs this much, or we could generate this much, where you can imagine the community coming together and saying, hey guys, maybe we should do some group thing that generates income, and then it goes in the pot.
Absolutely,
that would be fun.
Yeah,
we've thought about that, and one of the probably the main thing would be just that pool of data that we all sort of co-own, that we're using to determine this. The simple UBI is valuable to people, to third parties, and so if it goes out to a vote to the members that we want to be able to capitalize on that somehow, then that money then goes back into the community and becomes part of the dividend that goes out.
I'm imagining all sorts of money-making schemes.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of opportunity for rising tide sort of schemes too. Like, what if we, when we get a bigger and bigger community, there's a lot of money flowing through and a lot of people connected, which begs the question: in what clever ways could we connect these people and there's money flowing through to invest in things as a group and to make bigger things happen.
Yes. My final question: how does one become president of Comingle? I'm kidding.
There are no presidents. Yeah.
The nation of Comingle.
There's no presidents, no kings. Yeah. That's that's part of the vision. Is like, is it even possible to have some sort of self-governing system that doesn't really require much in the way of leadership? Not that we're not here to lead things, but as much as we can. But that's not the point.
That's something I'm really curious to find out about too, is like when we have a lot of people connected and we want this thing to run, we want to build it towards being a cooperative and being owned and directed by the membership. How do we introduce some cool new democratic systems for allowing the members to vote on things? Or how do we create, say we do community funds where people can direct money to like little initiatives in their areas? How do we make it so that people's votes are weighted based on how much they put in and based on different sorts of proposals? How do we make a different form of democracy happen just because we're able to choose to? I think there's a lot there that we can, if we build this community to any significant size, we can start playing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of the idea came sort of sprang out of like just thinking like more in kind of like a science fiction way of like what exactly does a direct democracy look like? And I was listening to you talking about with Peter Diamandis about just how technology might be able to assist in that kind of idea. And so this sort of sprang out of like, I just was like, maybe I'll just make some interface designs for what it looks like to have a direct democracy and put those up on a blog. And so it just kind of rolled from there. And like the first thing that you need to have is a pool of money, really, to be able to work with. And figuring out how to allocate that.
Does it
Yeah,
show
all
yet?
right.
Does it has the ticker moved up in real time?
Oh, yeah, it just went in. We're at 43% now.
Incredible.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. That's
But
amazing.
Amazing.
But I do have a big condition, which is it should be renamed to Comingle.
Mm-hmm. That'll cost more than $5.
Much catchier.
That's
Kidding.
That's nice.
Comingle's much better and more sensible.
You can go and run with that hashtag as long as you want, though.
Even I don't want to get involved with Comingle.
It's like red flags everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Comingle, very, very benign sounding, and this project's very benign. So congrats, guys, on taking action and putting something in place that could smooth out people's financial lives. It's a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.
The bet really is that there are people out there who will actually want to be net payers into the system, just as there are people who would appreciate being net payers into a full UBI system. Like people say, even like during your campaign with a 10% value-added tax and a basic income, like the math works out so that if you're, if 100% of the VAT is passed on, and someone is spending over $120,000 per year, then they're spending $12,000 into the VAT, and they're getting back $12,000. So then they're net neutral. So anyone spending over $120,000 is not a net recipient of the freedom dividend as proposed, as long as they're spending that much money. And are those people unhappy? And I don't think so. I think some people might complain that they're not net beneficiaries, but at the same time, there'll be people who will welcome that society is in a better place, that they're surrounded by people who are more economically secure, their mental health is better, violence is lessened, and just there's so many different ways that just a little bit more economic security could help society and improve social cohesion, and this idea that somehow you only benefit if you actually are a net recipient is false, and I think there's a lot of people out there who know that.
Well, one of the things I hear all the time, Scott, back to an earlier point in this conversation, is that a lot of folks be like, look, I'm fine with paying more if it's actually going to other humans.
Right.
But right now I feel like I'm putting it into this set of pipes, and then who the hell knows what goes on.
Right.
and that's a legitimate perspective in my mind. So Comingle solves that problem, because you're like, look, I give a little more, and like every dollar goes to another human. It's one reason why I love just like tipping a server a little more. It's like, that's pure, like that's dollar for dollar. Also, my first job was as a busboy, so like there's that. But there's purity to this too. It's like if I give a little more, just it went to someone else, and most people are much cooler with that than I'm giving to the machine, and then the machine's patting me on the head and being like, yes, you did right. And then we're like, what are you doing with that money? And we're like, oh, wasting it.
Yeah, there's nothing feel good about paying taxes. Whereas if
Well,
you
again,
know that your money's going to a person, that kind of feels good. There's that connection is there.
Yeah, I mean, we'd feel better about our taxes if we felt like they were being effective and mindful and conscientious and everything else, instead of like not those things.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really important, is to connect people to both the impact. We'll have just mountains of data, because we have their time on the app, and we see the different changes in their bank account, and we get a 2-year look back window. So we even have a control group of the people who are on the UBI from before to then, and we're able to directly measure with all kinds of different metrics what happens to a group of people who are not only receiving a regular basic income stipend, but one that doesn't end. So it's the first sort of permanent and scalable version of one that is, at least at this frequency. I guess Alaska sort of has been experimenting with that for a few decades now, but that's once a year. So what happens if we have that sort of thing broken up week by week, and you see the reliable heartbeat of that money coming in, and what it means to people, and how many fewer people are, missing their electric bills, or robbing Peter to pay Paul, or how many more people get gym memberships. The data that we could find from this is like impact data is sort of endless, I would think.
I think that we would be remiss to not really at least dive in a little bit into automation technology and the future of that, and the kind of I told you space that we exist in right now, as far as what Andrew was talking about during his campaign. And like, here we are post ChatGPT, where there's just a lot more capable AI, and how does that impact things? How does it even impact the conversation? Instead of not only being, oh, we need to make sure to protect people from income loss and income insecurity, but also, hey, this technology was trained on everybody's data that we all created. It was, the internet is something we together collectively created. It was trained on books from people who have long passed, that have been in the public domain for a long time, but it's something that essentially we inherited. And so can this actually impact the UBI conversation as being something that really helps us understand it as being, say, a tech dividend and in a technological inheritance, like these kinds of things that we should perceive differently than something like a tax-funded mechanism would do?
Yes, I will summarize this by saying I told you so. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, it's all coming down the pike in a very dramatic way, and it makes me sad sometimes that, like, I a lot of the people here on the space I recognize, and a lot of us were in Iowa making that case, and there's like an element now where I see that as like the last stand of humanity. And then it's like, whoops, like, a couple years later, AI comes, and it's like, all sorts of madness ensues. So it's one reason I love this effort is because, like we will try different approaches. We tried winning the White House and didn't get there, and so we're going to try Comingle, and we're going to try Forward Party, and to try all sorts of things. But yeah, the automation pressure is definitely totally real. Congratulations again, guys. I have to jump in a car and go to this Seattle interview to try and beat the drum about Forward. But cannot wait to see Comingle develop as you hit this goal, and then it gets developed and then actually starts improving people's lives. Let's give the team a round of applause for building this and the vision. And don't let my departing put an end to this discussion, because I'm sure you guys have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, we'll stick around and answer questions. But thank you so much, Andrew, for jumping on and for your contribution. You've always been a good friend in this work. And
hey, man, Iowa, forever. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you, Andrew. Take care. All right. Yeah, that was
okay. Now we can talk about him. Yeah, he's back. Yeah.
Can you believe that guy? Oh, he's still here.
Yeah. So let's. We knew that we had a limited amount of time, so I didn't want to invite people to speak and take up that time. But now that he's gone, I welcome people to ask questions, and two, you can ask in the replies, or you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question in the space.
Let's just remind everyone that the top tweet, Scott's thing at the top of the replies in the tweet, is the link to the crowdfund, a link to his blog about it. But yeah, that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to raise money, but more importantly, raise a movement. We want you all to join us in building this. So yeah, let's take some questions.
Let's see. Let's do Angie. She was here yesterday. Hi, Angie. You there?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
My question regarding commingling is I would like for any money that went into the account to be earmarked for the most vulnerable, yet the most vulnerable in my community. So, and then to spread out a little bit further as you know what I mean? Because yes, I want to help people who are suffering worldwide, yet, and definitely throughout the country, right? This is my country. Yet what I have found is that it's community that is the
yeah, you're definitely not the only person that feels that way, and it's a conversation we've had a lot of, like, what is your perception of your community? And I think like what are the boundaries of that community? And for most people, it is kind of the people that they see, the ones that are right there in front of you. But there is also this, like, sense of the online community, the internet community, and you do have this sense that these people are connected to you also. So it's, I think your idea that of being able to kind of earmark for your own area is something we have talked about, and it is a capability that I think we'll have to some extent. But right now we're trying to just keep the community as everyone, as sort of like just a way to drive home more of like a universalist type of idea.
Agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yet I also ride by veterans with "I will work for food" signs.
Yeah.
And how do I get them, the people I actually see? Yes, we are a worldwide community. I totally agree with that. And I honor, your worldwide vision. Yet I don't want to rain on your parade, but I think
No,
that
I think everybody kind of
Well,
vacillates back and forth between like that idea of like who's, you know, do I, if I can't see these people, are they, I want to be able to help the people that I see right now. That's going to be the thing that is going to feel the best.
so
And there's something real about that.
I think this is a good opportunity to kind of get into the kind of overarching, wider vision, even around Comingle, and also in combination with Conrad has done with the Bootstraps docuseries based on the pilot that he did, and he could talk a little bit more about this. But I just want to say that part of this, part of what we're thinking is that once the docu-series is out there, that the call to action for the docu-series can be Comingle, and these can involve community screenings. So screening the series, from city to city to city, town to town, and encouraging people to sign up members of their community. And I think that the option for Comingle being a universal implementation at the private level really reduces a lot of the barriers that prevent a lot of people from gaining some kind of assistance in economic security, some kind of floor. And I also just want to reiterate too that that's what it is. Like, this is a floor. And that's what UBI is. It's a floor. So it's not meant to do everything, but there should definitely be additional programs and additional services on top of the UBI floor. But the fact is that there needs to be some floor that's built on universality in order to make sure that nobody is excluded. And so with Comingle, the hope is that there can be as few people excluded as possible. At first, it'll be the requirement will be you need to be able to have a bank account. But as we discussed in the space yesterday, part of that goal too is to have banking partners that are willing to sign up people who are homeless, without addresses, these kinds of people in extreme need, and also be able to possibly even have some newly created Comingle kind of bank in the future, something that could really make that possible. But yeah, the goal is to create this floor that is completely missing, and to be able to use that to reach people that are traditionally left out, and that can, I think, really help these people who are traditionally left out of these so many programs find something in a way that they're usually excluded from. So if Conrad, if you wanted to follow it up too.
Yeah, I have a couple things about that, and then I'll talk a little about the campaign that you brought up. Yeah, you mentioned, Angie, you see a homeless veteran on the street, and I see that. I mean, I was in New York City, and now I'm in upstate New York, but you see it all the time, and the problem just seems overwhelming, right? And I can't give everyone $1 because I don't have enough dollars. I'm not going to really be able to help them. It's not really any different for foundations. We've been talking to a lot of foundations about what we could do with Comingle, and a lot of their workflow is, okay, you find someone in their deepest, darkest crisis, and then you have to be a one-stop shop to do everything to get them back on their feet because they don't even have some source of income. So you're not just setting them up with a bank account or some sort of money income. You're setting up housing. You're setting up all kinds of stuff. And these organizations are very overwhelmed because they're trying to basically do everything. Whereas if we take a part of that process and say, we now have a very simple infrastructure. If you plug that person into this, they're just going to start getting money right away. And then whatever amount of that money can help them solve for themselves is something that now these organizations don't have to solve for them, and they can fill in the gaps more selectively and specifically, right? Rather than having to do everything for someone who has nothing, right? So this is about giving people their own resilience. And I think all the time, like, I still give out $1 when I can, but I imagine myself going around just helping people sign up for Comingle, knowing that this person's going to get $50 a week now if they get on the platform, right? That's a really good way to do something in your community. Also, like Scott mentioned, in the long term, because this is movement building, we're giving a place for a lot of people to pool their resources and really find how we can use that in creative ways. There's a lot of opportunities as we grow to use the extra revenue that we won't be giving to shareholders because we don't have shareholders to build new tools for the community. So there's nothing saying we can't build an option to take the money that you're getting in from Comingle and put it towards, local community funds, right? And say you get 5,000 people in your city are throwing, on average $10 a week towards some community fund, then you can vote on what to do with that. That your local city council or your elected leaders aren't getting done. This is more medium to long-term type stuff, but the point here is the bigger we get, if we're connected in our communication, but also, in our financial spending power and in a very efficient way with no, middlemen taking out, a big chunk of it just for the privilege of having the money pass through. There's not really a limit to what we can do together. So in the sake of building that movement, building this place to sort of, I guess, build that nation of Comingle. I don't know if that sounds problematic or not yet. We're still playing with, messaging. But if we build out to 1 million people, we have $1 billion a year flowing through Comingle, doing good with very little waste, and we're starting to change the world in an incredible way. Our plan for when we launch Comingle, we're about a year away from launching once we have these development funds that puts us back on track, is to pair it with another project I've been working on for the last 7 years now, sort of under the radar, but it's a docuseries called Bootstraps, where we ran a UBI pilot, 21 people all around the country, totally different walks of life, for 2.5 years. The footage is just amazing. The stories are amazing, and we're in post-production. We're also about a year away from releasing that. The way we'd like to set this up is a nationwide campaign where we use the documentary for spreading the word, letting people know in an unpreachy way, like this is what we found, this is what's going on with this idea, with the added twist of Comingle now being this tool that you never get when you go see one of these documentaries or things at the campaign. The call to action in any petition or anything is write a letter to your senator, pressure the government to do something. And the second you're in one of these meetings or whatever, and you're excited about an idea or mad about an outrage or whatever, and it gets to the question, what can we do about it? The answer is almost always write a letter to your senator, and everyone just kind of deflates, right? The air just leaves the room because no one believes that's really going to do anything anymore. Whereas what we can say is, hey, we have this platform. We're just doing it ourselves. We've got, 10,000 people now. We're, 6,000 of which, were raised above the poverty line, or whatever the numbers are. You say, put your money where your mouth is, join it, and see how you like it, and let's just do this together until it gets so big they can't ignore us.
So yeah, part of that goes back to what Angie was asking, is just that there are all these very personal human stories that we connect much better to than the general idea of people in general, so and we want to have a way to connect with that, and I think Conrad's documentary does an amazing job of that. But yeah, it's obviously something that we've thought about. So thanks for asking that. But also I wanted to say we've got Paul, our other co-founder, is on here. Sorry, I didn't see you, Paul. But
hey, Paul.
Hey guys.
Great.
But yeah, we got a bunch of questions, so we should.
Yeah,
who's next?
All the co-founders are here. So I think it'd be a good opportunity before the next question is just to give Paul an opportunity to introduce himself and even express what brought you to the project. Why do you think it's important, Paul?
Sure. So, yeah, I'm Paul Barros. I'm a career engineering leader. Been building all kinds of cool and interesting software over the years. And Conrad came to me with this, no, sorry, Josh came to me with this idea that I believe he and his wife came up with over television one night. And it just resonated with me. And when in kind of our initial discussions about it, it was just as kind of the gig economy was heating up, and we were talking about how could we help people, for example, that are gig workers that have income fluctuations month over month. How could we help them to kind of smooth out that income fluctuation? And so that was kind of some of the original ideas that we had, and from there, 2019 we started working on it, built an initial prototype, and demonstrated that we could actually do this. And now we're at this point where we've got something that's up and running, and we're so glad to have all of you folks here to hear us out and to lend a hand. And we're looking forward to really showing the world there's a way that we can make this happen. We don't have to wait on big government. We don't have to wait on anyone. We can do it ourselves.
Thanks, Paul. Lacey, welcome, and I'm happy to see you here personally. I hope you were able to catch the whole thing with Andrew. And what's
Yes.
your question or comment?
Well, thanks, Scott. First, I just want to say thank you to you. I remember getting the email talking about Comingle that you sent out maybe a month or so ago, and thinking, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like, this was the whole universal basic income was the thing that first drew me to Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. And so I love the fact that you guys are deciding to take this on yourself and figure out a way to make it happen. And so I just want to first say thank you to that. I'm super excited to be a part of it. As someone who has lived, like, I guess, more of an upper middle class life most of my life, I can see both sides of how exciting it is to know that there's an opportunity for there to be a floor for me personally and what will be my family in the future. And then also I'm excited about knowing that what I can give to people who need it. And it doesn't even have to be the most desperate people for it to make a difference. And I know that
Right.
because I'm a regular human, right? Like, we're all regular humans and we need stuff sometimes that our income doesn't provide. So I'm really, 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 really excited about this, and would even venture to say that once the documentary is ready to come out, I'm happy to host a local showing or lead and help in getting people to sign up for Comingle for that. So all that said, yes.
Thanks,
My
Lacey.
question is, you're welcome. You're welcome. My question is, I'm wondering how. Actually, I have two questions. One is, I'm wondering how much people will be able to interact on the app and kind of like see profiles of who might be receiving money in general, not necessarily from them directly, but just in general. And then the second question is a little bit more, I guess, deeper and nuanced. And I guess it's like, I'm wondering what, if as you were developing this, kind of what, if you've thought through, like, or not if you've thought through, I'm sure you have, but like, what would be the drawbacks to being involved? And then, kind of how would you speak to those for anybody who is kind of on the fence about it or doubtful, or they're like, well, this would be a drawback, so I don't know that I would want to do it. So I guess I wanted to hear your thoughts on, what would, if the naysayers would be saying something, what would they say? And then how would you respond?
Well, the first part you asked, actually, what would you picture, just from hearing the concept, the amount of user interaction that would be going on between users?
Well, I mean, I think at the very least, it makes sense that we would have profiles that we could have if we wanted to participate in that way and share. So at the very least, and then potentially have some kind of interaction, messaging or what have you. But I don't know where the lines are for, we don't want this to be
Yeah,
too social,
yeah.
and
Right now, we're not focusing on the social aspect of it, but it is something we've sort of realized we probably will need, because just to be able to satisfy that need of wanting to know what this is all doing and like what the impact is. And so you're going to want to hear from other people. I mean, you just naturally want to know, what people are going through, and like just a place for like people to just sit and gripe about money. Like that's pretty valuable. Like just
yeah,
being able to unload or have other people that kind of, are able to just listen. So we haven't gotten there yet, but it will be factored in somehow, and I think we're going to try to get creative with it.
I think
I
that's
think
going to be super important in building a culture. We really want people to feel like they're connecting with people, not plugging
yeah,
into an app.
yeah.
It's very important to maintain people's anonymity so that no one's like called out for being a recipient or a donor, but also
Right.
I think we're going to want to give people the option to share and build out ways people can connect over time that are non-abusive or exploitive, but allow people to connect in really healthy ways.
Yeah, it's the anonymity part that is powerful and useful, and it's something that we want to maintain, just because, yeah, you don't want people, there's all kinds of like weird shame and pride associated with money that we just don't even want to get into. Like, and if people have some anonymity, they're able to be much more open about what the real issues are. But then on the other side, that becomes something that can get abused very quickly, and
Right.
people pretending to be other people, and
Gotcha.
And the second part of the question was also interesting, and it was, who can?
Oh, drawbacks. I have a quick answer to that. I mean, we're
Okay.
trying to build this to be, as few drawbacks as possible, right? Like we have the arguments for, if you have low income, you'll get more income. If you have high income, you'll have a really good way to give that's more efficient than wherever else you give. But there's all the drawbacks that concern me the most are the things that we have to design around, the engineering problems that are baked into the system as it is, like the limitations of the banking system as it is, the people being unbanked, and the limitations of our current social safety net. There's conversations in there's groups of people that run UBI pilots and guaranteed income pilots, and the things batted around all the time are, how do we give people money without screwing up their other benefits, without getting them thrown off their other benefits, especially if it's a temporary pilot, or and it's something that tracks their income and then they lose it and they can't get it back, or how do we keep people from having tax burden based on that sort of thing. And one thing that we're leaning on at the beginning is that it's voluntary, it's easily opt out, and we'll be encouraging people who are in different sorts of social benefit situations to take their time and decide if this really is for them. Because asking something at this sort of a scale to fit within all the nooks and crannies of the system that we're trying to essentially replace is not feasible. But the more we can build to a size and a scale where what we can offer can become a replacement for people that is genuinely better for them in their estimation than the benefits they might lose, or if they discover that they won't lose their benefits. These are the things that we'll be finding out over time, but knowing full well that it might not be right for some people in certain circumstances to join us.
It's kind of the places at which it overlaps with existing financial things like taxes or other government programs, where maybe there's going to be some conflicts that happen there. Like how will it affect taxes and things like that? We're trying to just stay out of that, and I think we can for the most part. But there's all those little kind of accounting questions.
That's a good thing to address really quickly, what our plan with taxes is, and what we did with our UBI pilot for the documentary as well is, the United States has a gift limit that's untaxable. You can give any person you want up to $16,000 and nobody has to report it as taxes as a gift, right? So what we, part of the budget beyond this development budget is going to be setting up our legal structure and all of the agreements that need to go into something like this. And we want to position ourselves as just the facilitator for the money pass through, right? It's not people are giving money to Comingle and then Comingle's giving money. Comingle is just letting it pass through, and we're allowing it to go along this smart mechanism, right? But the main agreement people make when they join will be, we agree to support each other, by this mechanism and allow Comingle to be the ones that facilitate it. So essentially what that means is that, if we have 10,000 people on the platform, it's 10,000 people agreeing to just, hand each other $1 here and there or $50 or whatever. And that's not taxable, right? So the goal and what I think we'll be able to achieve is basically have this be outside of the tax system, not reportable as income.
And I just want to add to that an example of this, I think, is good to point out, which is, let's say somebody is currently receiving supplemental security income, which is one of our 2 disability programs. And it can take 2 years to qualify for, and there's a 50% clawback rate on the amount that's received. And there are also asset tests, and the asset tests are what's especially pernicious too, in regards to, let's say somebody gets a gift, and that gift is, let's say it's $5,000 or something. It's below the limit. You don't have to report it on taxes. But the asset test looked at what's in your bank account. And so somebody can get kicked off of disability just for receiving a gift from somebody. And that helps to show just how messed up the programs are, and how we'll need to reform those too, even with the UBI floor. And like, we'll want to have some kind of improved disability where you don't lose it for having additional income, where you don't discourage that, where you don't have these asset tests. But the world that we live in right now has these really just pernicious conditions, and that happens to be a good example of one where someone could join Comingle, and even with the tax-free status and donation status of the amount, it could put them above the asset test limit, and therefore that would kick them out of the program. So that is definitely something to make sure people know about.
We had someone drop out of our docuseries pilot because she was 86 years old, and she was fabulous. She was going to be an amazing story. She was a former burlesque dancer headliner from all over Europe. The first thing we were going to shoot with her was like a reunion of 80-year-old burlesque dancers in Vegas. We were so excited. And she dropped out because she was in one of those fixed income living situations where they would monitor her bank account directly. And if she had too much money in it, she would lose her support.
Wow.
So she had to drop out. And what we're trying to do here is fix that system. And we can't fix that system by going along with it. We have to build something better and make it and try to get to a place as soon as possible where we can invite people in as an upgrade to what they're honestly going through.
Sounds like it's a super important part of the process.
Yeah, for sure. Patricia's actually next, and I think she'd be great. She actually can speak directly to this, right, Patricia?
Hi. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. Happy to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here. Well, yeah, I do a lot of work with the disability community. And so I guess really and truly, like, my area of expertise is specific to that. And so sorry, just so sorry. Really and truly, I think my best angle is that I think the best way I can specifically address it stands for a reason. This is like, um, because I'm Canadian, like I have a pretty broad a pretty broad, oh my God, it's, I just have a thing in my throat. Sorry. Like by virtue of being Canadian, I have like a lens, like my lens is like, I have a Canadian lens in terms of economics. And so my study at the moment is from the, like, I'm looking in terms of like poverty from the, I'm looking at poverty from a Canadian aspect, and I'm looking at basic income from a Canadian aspect. And at the moment, we have a bill for basic income, what we're calling GLBI in the House of Commons. Now, we, contextually speaking, because I've been listening to this now, like I came in yesterday to your space, and I was very interested to listen to you speaking, and I'm very excited to know specifically, you know, how does it work in such a way? Like, I'm wondering specifically how, just expanding on what you were saying, where could it go, you know, if you're a person who is unable to work, if you're a person who is not, like, more like, in broadly speaking, if you're not able to work, if you're a person who's hindered by your like level income, if you're a person who is not able to contribute, what is it specifically like? Because if I'm understanding you correctly, and I may not be, this is the fact is that I may not be understanding this correctly, so please correct me if I'm mistaken here. What is it specifically like? Are we able, like, is a person able to contribute, or like to be able to participate in something like this, like in Comingle? Is a person able to participate if they're unable to contribute to it? Because
Yeah,
I'm not
for sure.
Absolutely. They're the
That's kind
ones
of the
who
main
need
point.
it the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah.
really, yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is, I'm sorry, I have something
No,
stuck
but
in my
I
throat,
think
and so
there's
naturally
something
I
that's
unmute when I'm starting to
no,
cough.
that's okay. There's something about that people do get that perception. I think that, uh, and we're trying to figure that out a little bit. That because it is a participatory thing where the same rules apply to everybody, um, there's just kind of this feeling that like it, that those rules don't. I don't know how to express this, but it's uh, that you're going to be left out somehow. Like maybe those don't apply to all circumstances. Like you can. We're just kind of so used to like whatever the way society is set up to be exclusionary to somebody at some point, and that a set of rules can't possibly accommodate everybody. Um, that we're sort of just used to having there be different rules for people that have money and people that don't. And I think it's important to know that it's not necessary. That's just the way we're kind of been trained to think.
Yeah, there's no minimum sort of pledge or contribution. You have to have a bank account, and that's something like for the unbanked, that's a problem that we want to solve and help solve in the long term. But you don't have to have an income. In fact, those are the people who get the most benefit financially out of Comingle, and that's very important to make possible. Yeah.
Hey, I'm so sorry, Scott. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I just would like Lacey to continue on her train of thought there, because this is my area of expertise. You say you have to have a bank account, and here in Canada, like, I talk about poverty a lot here, and this is, you remember Tom, don't you, Scott?
Yeah.
You know Tom, the BC Basic
Mm-hmm.
guy. Like, he and I do a lot of work together because he's in the disability community too. And so, you know, like, I would like Lacey very much to continue on her train of thought before I come back to that. So if Lacey, you don't mind, just
Yeah, can you help me understand what you would like for me to continue to talk about? I'm happy to do it.
okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I was under the okay. I'm sorry. I was under the impression that you had like you were on that same path. That's okay. Scott, you mentioned that you only had to have a like in order to participate in this, you only had to have a bank account. In a lot of scenarios, people don't have bank accounts, like
Yes.
especially if they're impoverished. You know, tons of people don't have bank accounts, and there's no workaround for that kind of thing, is there?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll cover that again. I don't know if you missed it today or yesterday, but yeah, part of this is like Conrad himself kind of learned this, as a real example, doing the Bootstraps pilot, and he can get into that a bit. But so just to keep it short, part of the desire here is to work with banking partners to actually get people banked who usually wouldn't be able to be banked, to make it possible to be part of this program. So, like, banking partners are certainly a goal of this. And I would also just like to point out too, along the discussion of the disability lines, and this is like a UBI argument in general, is that even though I would suggest that there are certainly issues with someone who is in an existing disability program to join something like Comingle because of the issues with the programs themselves, in the US, 4 out of 5 people with a disability aren't receiving any kind of assistance from the federal government. And so that's quite a big hole for those with disabilities to fall through. And of course, part of that being it's difficult to go through the process. So if you're asking for someone with disabilities to go through a process, it's even harder for them. And also part of the issue as well that makes it difficult for people with disabilities to go through these, jumping through these hoops is, the fact that disabilities themselves are not always, super easy to discern. And someone can have a disability but not 100% of the time. And so programs that provide monthly income are definitely not designed to help them because they can't pass these tests and they just go, it's just not for them. And so there needs to be a floor underneath all disability programs to make sure that everyone with a disability receives some kind of support. And until we have a universal program, we will not be reaching everyone with a disability who needs that extra support. So it really needs to be seen as that missing foundation.
May I
One
ask
thing,
just?
one
Oh,
thing
I
to keep
pardon,
in
go ahead.
mind. Sorry, I wanted to add a little to that. I had the experience with. I had to work with a banking partner that I had special connections to people who were high up in the organization, and when we were trying to get a basic income to someone who was unhoused and had never had a bank account, we needed to pull strings with those connections and make that happen, and that's a burdensome bureaucratic process. So if we try to go that route on a case-by-case basis, we're very limited in how many people we can actually get the support to, even if we're focusing specifically on that target demographic. Whereas if we create an infrastructure where it becomes much, much easier to bring people into that sort of support, then all of a sudden we create a whole new incentive structure and we open up a whole lot new opportunities for people to, help as something that they want to do, help someone get a bank account because that they can immediately sign up and start getting income there. Banking partners in the future as well. Like, I think a lot of the reason banks are hesitant to go out of their way to get people bank accounts who are unbanked is there's not a lot of money in it, right? Someone's going to open a bank account. They're going to be constantly low balance. They might overdraft a lot. They're not making any money off those accounts. There's not a lot of incentive in the commercial banking space for these companies to make these decisions. Whereas if we approach a banking partner and say, listen, we want you to work with us to make it really easy for a lot of people, unbanked people, to get their first bank accounts. When they open those bank accounts, money will immediately be dropping into those bank accounts, right? So now they're opening it as a place to collect money. So it kind of fits even with their business model to partner with us. So we're opening, by building the infrastructure, we're opening the gates for a lot more people to get banked a lot quicker by doing that. That's the theory anyway.
Can I just ask one last question?
Sure.
Thank you. Scott, I have read everything you've written. I have also read everything Carl Whitterquist has written. And at the moment, I told you before, my study is essentially deconstructing poverty lines. And you frequently make mention to the notion of an income floor.
Mm-hmm.
When I read your stuff, I interpret that to mean that it's sort of like an income floor being like a fight against, sort of like the boundary against poverty floor.
Yes,
if you think about
an elevated floor.
That's right. Yeah. So there's the poverty line, so to speak, which is a term I absolutely despise, but that doesn't matter. But then there's a sort of like a cushion, being like, in terms of it being a cushion, more like a boundary over the poverty line, so to speak, like a threshold, or not over it, but around it, so to speak. What does that really and truly mean, and who does it include? And the reason why I'm asking that is because poverty lines, and I mean this like wholeheartedly, poverty lines, so like broadly speaking, leave out so many demographics. In fact,
sure,
in my analysis, they purposefully like leave out so many people. By virtue of being a member of the disability community, by virtue of studying them, I can see Indigenous folk, I can see members of like all kinds of marginalized communities being like just railroaded out of poverty lines. So what does it mean specifically of the income floor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a floor as being an amount of money below which no one can fall, and it being universal, so that applies to everybody. And again, that's why it's so important, is because if you're trying to draw these artificial distinctions via means testing, via targeting, any test, you're always going to create false negatives, being that those who should pass the test who don't. And so a fully universal system is how to reach everybody. And that's how you create this floor. That's why I describe it as a floor, because not a single person can fall below that. And that's also, I think, helps describe where it's just a floor. So you still build on top of it. You still have other programs and services. It's just like this missing foundation upon which all these programs and services would function better. So even to just describe poverty, like, yeah, any attempt to describe poverty from an economic sense is just purely an economic, an arbitrary economic abstraction, as deciding that, oh, it's this amount or it's this percentage of median income, or any kind of way of measuring it. It's just an invention. So if we were to actually, say, in the U.S., utilize the existing federal poverty line, which has a very weird rule of being 3 times the amount of what was considered to be a average food requirement decades ago, adjusted, for inflation along these years. Very strange, relative kind of arbitrary line. But if we were to draw that line, which is around $13,000 right now per year, and if we were to essentially, we could mathematically and economically speaking, based on that measure, eliminate poverty by creating the UBI floor at that level. So is that to say that, nobody is impoverished anymore, that like there is no poverty because we defined it perfectly? Like, of course not. There's always going to be relative poverty. But the fact is that if you make sure that the people as a right, as a universal right, receive some amount of access to resources, then you've certainly reduced poverty in a major way, in a very effective way. And I think that's key. And I think we should grow it from there. So I don't think that we should say create a poverty line based income and then keep it there forever, let's say index it with inflation and maintain the same measure. I think that over time it should grow with, say, it could be a percentage of GDP per capita. So let's say it's 25% of GDP capita is the income floor. And in that way, that floor would continue to rise as national productivity rises, and everybody would benefit from this. And the distance between the income floor and whatever the poverty line is defined as would continue to increase because people would be better and better off. So that's like my idea of how I would prefer this to happen. But also right now, I think any amount of floor is better than the zero floor. So as for regards to Comingle, if we create a floor of $50 per week, aka $200 per month, that's a non-zero floor that is definitely helpful to people and reduces poverty and reduces inequality. And in that way, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, our whole conception of the definition of poverty is this sort of weirdly chosen line that has been drawn that has very little to do with anything. So we can say we're eliminating poverty, but we could also eliminate poverty by just making that line zero, right? Oh, look, we just got rid of it. So
that's one way.
But there's something else that there's no line for the wealth line. There's no line saying how rich is too rich. There's no definition for that, and that's something I've been kind of exploring and wanting to because you do sort of need it. It's if you're thinking about things like cost of living and how much money does a person need for a minimum wage, you're starting to put value on people's time, right? You're trying to what is 1 year of your time worth, and that will be your salary, right? But what will that actually buy you? We don't have a way to measure that's something that's missing from our whole economic conception, is that there's an amount of money that that if you wanted to be a rich person and have everything you ever wanted and all your dreams fulfilled, how much does that cost? And how many people are going well beyond that right now, right? And is there something else we can do with that money? So anyway,
it reminds me to let everyone know that or just to mention that it's really fun listening to Josh's brain turn. And he puts together these really good videos. We're going to be dropping them this month. That's a great way to help support, is by following us or following the YouTube page on Comingle and sharing that out as a way to sort of help us promote and get people thinking about cool stuff. They're actually pretty hilarious.
So if anyone wants to help run the calculations on how much it actually costs to be a rich person, I want that number.
I'd like to welcome Chloe. First of all, thanks for being here. And what is your question or comment? Oh, looks like we just lost her.
Let me take this second while we're getting someone in to just remind everyone that we're here primarily about this crowdfund that we're doing. If you just came into a conversation about ideas, we're also starting a movement, and we're looking for people to not just chip in, but to share it and get excited to help push this new leg of UBI with us. So we'll be doing more of these spaces, and we'll be having stuff all month that we hope you'll follow along with.
Oh, we should also mention too that as of yesterday, there's also a subreddit for Comingle, If you want to go there and subscribe to the subreddit, then you'll also be able to find various videos and articles about Comingle there, and there'll be discussions there, and it's at least some place as of right now for everybody to connect who is interested, and at least who is on Reddit.
Yeah. We obviously can't take everyone's questions, so if we have a post in there where people can ask stuff, we can answer it offline as well.
Do you want to get to see? There's one of these questions I thought was good from Thomas, and it looks like he's got a couple different ones.
Should we just invite him to talk? And because I answered a couple in text form, but if he wants to follow up on something,
sure. Yeah, I can invite him. Thomas, are you there? Yeah, sounds like it.
Hey, y'all. Thanks.
Hey, Thomas.
Thanks for inviting me to talk, and thanks for hosting this space.
Thanks for coming.
I was listening on an alternate account earlier, one of my UBI accounts, but I switched back over so I could actually participate.
Okay, great. Yeah, you had a few different comments and questions. What do you want to highlight?
Well, first of all, this whole idea of Comingle really resonates with me. It's an idea that I've kind of been preaching on Reddit for years. I don't know if I should use the word preach, but I've been brainstorming it with people. And the idea of building some type of UBI ourselves instead of waiting on the government or waiting on taxes. And, as somebody, in the world today, we have all these people that are increasingly less and less tied to religions. And there's this fundamental thing in humanity that a lot of religions serve, which is, tithing, giving a percentage of your income, and then using that to help other people. And so there's all these people that are disconnected from religions, and they're lacking that function. So I think it's really interesting, really awesome. So, but one of the questions I had was kind of the idea of using open source software licenses. Have y'all thought about any type of mechanism like that for, like a sig of a software license where anyone who uses the software has to agree to donate money to Comingle or something, And I don't know if this is really the right form to ask it. Maybe I should be asking some of my harder questions.
Go on Reddit. We need to get that going. So just post 1,000 questions and see if anybody picks them up. But if there's one you want to, as far as the software license idea, that's it's an interesting idea. I think the way that just software development works is one of the inspirations for even doing something like this is that there's just people out there coding stuff and they're just doing it and putting it out there for anybody to use. There's open source software has been the key to the internet. That we would not have nearly as much information out there at our fingertips if it weren't for people that were super smart and doing it just because they like doing it and sharing it everywhere. It's similar to the scientific community. It's just you're putting your work out there to be used by others just because it needs to be done. So in a way, if you're also on Comingle, you're maybe getting, a dividend for that work in some way. But that's about as far as my thoughts go on that.
Almost kind of like there's an MIT license or whatever. It'd be kind of interesting if there was a Comingle license. I was just going to see if I could plant that idea.
Go Paul.
This is Paul. So we have talked about and considered that thought of openly licensing, similar to you mentioned the MIT license. So OpenAI, for example, licenses their software under the MIT license, and that's how Microsoft gets access to it and builds products around it. So there are pros and cons, obviously, to that model, but it's definitely something we've considered, and that is a possibility in the future.
So one of I guess my bigger question, the harder question, and I'm not saying this to detract anyone from Comingle, but it's more of the question of, like you all mentioned the idea of this being sort of like a democratically controlled platform. And I also know that absolute power absolutely corrupts. And we have this concept of, decentralized autonomous organizations and, DAOs. OpenAI, for example, has this sort of nonprofit charter that holds them to certain series of rules that are almost like immutable, right? And once they attain AGI, certain things take into place.
Hmm.
And then you have these concepts like trusts, where things are kind of independently managed. I guess I'm just kind of curious, who's watching the or what is your vision for accountability and ensuring that um, things don't get corrupted later on?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. And that's one we talk about too. Uh, Somewhere there needs to be some fail safes, like some way of like multiple. Uh, it's kind of, I'm thinking in terms of the way that our federal government's set up, and that you've got the checks and balances. Like, are there some uh, checks and balances that need to be implemented into the system itself? So far, it doesn't seem like it's necessary because there's not that much going on. But I think if we get to a point where some of there's some different types of decisions being made that aren't just like the question of one that comes up is what if we actually want to increase the 7% or decrease it or whatever, if we want to make any change like that to the way the system itself works, then that's a whole different way of the whole different mechanism we have to build, which is a way to determine the best possible outcome based on what different opinions are. So yeah, some sort of voting mechanisms are what we have in mind.
I would say part of this too is about the creation of a culture, around this, and I think that that will develop in time, even as is. So I think that down the line, where it starts coming to this decision to start like enabling more democratic decisions among the population would be self-selected for people who believe in the common good, wanting to do the best for everyone else within the community, and I think that's really helpful to these kinds of good decision making when you have that culture and those norms. And it's also just a good lesson as to how um, you can have a constitution protect us as we have the Constitution in our government protect us. And yet so much of this too, the way our government works, the way our systems work, is about the norms and cultures of the system. So as soon as you start having people who violate those norms and who go outside of even these protections or even find these gray areas and violate those, then that actually endangers the entire system, regardless of it having some kind of constitutional safeguard. So it really is important to make sure that we drive a positive culture with positive values in order for any kind of success to be had.
I also, this is a really important question to me. I think about this constantly, which is how does that live ourselves? How does it stay true to the mission? How does it not go down the path of just about every other company ever? And there's the question of how does this not get corrupted? It's important that it doesn't get corrupted from within our own leadership as well by different sorts of incentives and things like that. So part of what we want to do before launch with the budget we'll be raising beyond the development budget is legal structuring budget, and some of the ideas we're throwing around is trying to remove the profit incentives entirely from the model, and that through some combination of bylaws and structure that says, anything above, transparent and capped salaries or whatever we define, it has to be redirected towards mission aligned things. And that can be written in our charter. And it's very important it's done so early on before we have, accrued further obligations. And one of those obligations that's problematic for many, many things. I talked to, different founders and things and helping figure out how to develop this, who started up a company with this very bold idea. They wanted to change the world, and they built something really cool. But they, in order to get it built, had to raise a bunch of money from investors. And as soon as you have investors who are shareholders, you have a fiducial responsibility and obligation legally to maximize their profit indefinitely. So for me personally, it's really important to not have shareholders, and the only people who have shares right now are the co-founders on the board, essentially. And my goal in the long term is to build Comingle into some sort of steward ownership or cooperative model that really is owned by the people when it's ready to be, and buy ourselves out of ownership entirely. I think we should just kind of work for the community like everybody else.
Part of what we're designing is something that doesn't quite exist, which is a corporate entity that is that serves a greater purpose. I mean, we're sort of redesigning, what a company is, and that there's lots of people working in this area to try to come up with how do you make a actually responsible corporation, business, conglomerate, whatever it's even called, that is not just answering to building profits.
To be blunt, this is why we're talking to you guys, and we're doing a crowdfund, and we're not walking around Silicon Valley with venture capital meetings, because then anytime you talk to a venture capitalist, the typical model, at least, unless they're open to something more mission aligned, is, when is your IPO? What's your exit strategy? When are you going to sell? How many X am I going to earn as a return? How many shares do I get? How much control do I get? All of these things that, some of those company founders I've talked to had to quit their companies because their shareholders wouldn't let them become B Corps or whatever. We as much as possible, or completely if possible, we want to avoid having the direction of Comingle be tied to any sort of incentive for anyone to get some sort of a cash out, any individuals. So entirely to date, we've raised a couple $100,000 to get where we are, and it's all been donations and grants. We want to get as much as we can through this crowdfund, so that the people we're accountable to are the people we're building it for. And then for whatever is left over in terms of getting us off the ground, we want to use the results of this crowdfund and the excitement it generates as social proof to bring back to raise more either mission-aligned investment or grants and donations. So this is essentially our first big marketing test to get the public invested and involved, because we want the public to really be the ones who own it.
But that doesn't mean it's going public, so it's confusing.
Yeah, going public is a terrible term for actually selling out.
Right.
I mean, it really does sound to me that this is the perfect project to benefit from open source contributions. I mean, I myself as a software engineer, and if you all had your code base as open source, I would happily contribute to the cause. So food for thought there.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, that was a great question, and a great discussion we had as a result of that. I think the next question, and this is one of the written ones, so I'll just read this one. This is from Always Next Year. How can the average person help move this project forward besides the usual sharing or posting on social media? Do you recommend any other structural, tangible actions that we can take?
Oh yeah, I got one. Thought. I mean, this is the space I'm very excited about this space, because I assume there's some Yang Gang in here, and it's been a long time since this campaign, but there was something magical during that campaign where I think it was, Andrew drew a lot of people with his personality, but I think the most powerful thing in his campaign, beyond his positivity and his ability to be a spokesperson, was the idea of UBI and how it unleashes people, and the passion of the people who called themselves, who took the name the Yang Gang. Most of the advertising and campaigning and the things that really elevated his campaign came from, thousands or tens of thousands of people who believed in it, like the open source coders we're talking about. They believed in, the mission, the UBI movement so much that they went out there and they created, they memed and they shared and they brought people in. That's what we need, is organic excitement from a lot of other people about what we're doing, rather than messaging coming from some corporation trying to raise money for itself, right? So part of this big first marketing test is it's an organizing test as well. How many people can we get on board with what we're doing to not only be members when we launch and get this thing started quickly, but to help us as we build it in growing the interest, growing the community, giving us input and bringing more people in. So yeah, that's one of the big asks I have for you guys is much more than donating $1 or whatever, is really decide if this is something you want to put your time and passion toward, because we want to build it with you.
I also, even you explicitly mentioned that's like a response that's different than just saying, just donate $1. But also, I just want to reiterate too that it's actually really important to even just donate $1 during this Indiegogo campaign. I encourage everyone to do that, and it's certainly like an explicit action. So, like on the one hand, please, try to figure out ways of helping beyond social media. A lot of that's going to be talking to people about it and helping drum up excitement in whatever ways that that each individual feels that they can best do, just like how they can best contribute to UBI in general. But like an explicit, tangible action that everybody can take through this campaign is to donate at least $1 to the Indiegogo and encourage others to do the same. Because if we get thousands of people who have or donated to the campaign even $1, let's say the average is quite low thanks to like lots of people actually donating small amounts, then that says a lot in general, as Connor mentioned earlier, to other potential donors that can really put this across the line. But it also just shows in general that this is something that people actually want, that they're excited about.
And
yeah,
it's kind of a petition is what it is. We just need a lot of names on this petition is what we need.
Right.
If you look at the campaign page, there's two metrics, and people often get focused on the dollar amount / percentage of the goal. But over to the right is the number of backers, right? And the whole model of Comingle is how many people want to join. That's the big question. Will it work? How many people believe in it? And if we can get this number to thousands of people, even if they just gave $1, that is what, Scott and I started a nonprofit foundation to sort of be a fundraising hub outside of the crowdfund for all of this too. And when we're going to larger funders and things, and we're trying to entice them in the mission of what we're doing, the question from the people who are sort of in a place of wealth is like, well, no one's ever going to do this. No one believes in that. There's like a cynicism about people in general. So what we want to bring to them is that number of backers. And if we say, look at these, 2,000 people who signed up and said, we want this to happen. And with that many people, this is what Comingle would accomplish. So, this is worth supporting. So yeah, in your mindset of like what you're focusing on and supporting us, that dollar figure is huge, but even more important is the number of backers you can help us get on there.
Absolutely. Angie, do you have a
Yes.
question or comment? And thank you again for joining us again.
Oh, I'm so thrilled with this whole thing. And yes, I am going to donate a little bit more than $1, a little less than 5,000, like Andrew just did. But anyway, I have to go. But I wanted to ask you all to please consider getting an affiliate badge with X. I have no affiliation with X as far as work, but I think that if everybody who was able to get an affiliate badge through your affiliate badge, when we come up, you'll notice that I have a little check mark. That means that I'm probably me. I'm not a bot. You can see my picture and my little bio. And I do have a bank account, because you can't get that little check mark without those things. And the other thing that really boosts people up and gets people's curiosity going on X, which is, man, it's one of the, I'm going to cry. It's one of the most revolutionary social media platforms that I've participated in. And I've been participating in social media platforms since I was the mother of a high schooler who is now a mechanical engineer. Anyway, please think about Commingling having an affiliate badge that we could put next to our little check marks that'll get people thinking, what is that? And that's all I have to say.
Is that something you can? Is that something that
That's
somebody
really
can make? I didn't even
No,
know that was something you
that's
could do.
I'm not going to.
there's an organizational badge that you have to get as Comingle.
Correct. Correct.
Or
And that you can offer to us who participate. So when somebody sees that I'm speaking, when somebody sees that you're speaking, it has that little affiliate badge next
I
to
see
it.
what you're talking about. Okay, so what you're so Comingle does have a blue check. It is set
I
up.
see
It
We've
that.
is
got
I
our own,
see that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
see
But
that.
then
Okay.
what you're saying is besides that, you want to be able to, let's say, become a subscriber to
No, I want
Comingle,
to
because then
not a
that would
subscriber.
show. Because that's how you actually show your, like, if you were to reply to Comingle as a subscriber, then you would get the little mark next to your name, and then people would know that you are, connected with them. But
No,
are
that's not correct. That's not correct.
There's some other
yes,
badge.
sir. It's an affiliate badge that people who are affiliated with you can
okay?
get.
So, are
So
you talking about the?
Got to look that
Are
up.
you talking
okay.
about the gold badge? Because the gold
No,
badge.
no, I'm not talking about the gold badge. I'm talking about it, and that's not a badge. That's just okay. If you'll go to Boomer Mama, she has a Boomer house. Boomer Mama. Type in Boomer Mama, and she has a Boomer House affiliate badge. And I can become an affiliate of Boomer House and have that little affiliate badge on me. I'd like to have an affiliate badge that says Commingling. I've got to go.
I see it. That's great. Okay, cool.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you, Angie, for coming by again and for your suggestion. Thank you.
Here, I got just a little funny thing to notice that if you look at our crowdfund as a mini Comingle, every person is getting back $95. So if you only contributed $1, like if we took all the money that has been contributed and just decided forget it, let's just give it back to everyone, and divide it up evenly between the number of people, our dividend is about $94.30.
Right.
So the 80 people that gave $1 would be up $93.
Just to reiterate to everyone too that first of all, we're not going to do that, but also there's an all or nothing stipulation too as well. So yeah, that's part of this goal is if 75K is not reached, then nobody gets charged anything. The goal really is to reach 75K. It's all or nothing. So again, we encourage people to donate and encourage others to donate. Help this go viral. And with that, I mean, we're towards the end here. Again, having gone by, I should start scheduling these for 2 hours, just so we even know in advance that that's what we're looking at. I feel it's kind of difficult to keep it shorter. Maybe future ones would be talking about less, but it's fun to take all these questions and discuss this stuff.
We should ask everyone in here to follow Comingler so we can, post a tweet about when should we have our next one and figure out when we're setting up our next space.
And that account goes to both Conrad and I. So,
yeah.
So you can reach either of us.
I would say things to do you can do is follow all of these, all of the relevant Twitter profiles on here, plus ITSA Foundation. And, you know, be engaged in the little questions and surveys we have, like who should we have on, that kind of stuff. And then go to the websites. I'll put them in the chat, but as a response to Scott's, but the websites to get on the newsletter, because the newsletter is a big part of how we'll keep in touch with you during the campaign and after. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, thanks everybody for joining this space today. It was really exciting to have Andrew join us and to even have him donate $5,000 live, like while I was here. That was amazing. And please, the information for the Indiegogo is in the main reply to this space. And as Conrad said, you know, please follow and subscribe to the various you know, methods of subscribing, which you can also find at the bottom of the page of the Indiegogo. That has a lot of information for following. And yeah, just thank you again, everybody, for being a part of this. And we'll, I don't know when the next space will be, but we will definitely have another space and continue doing this throughout the month. So yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.